Okay, welcome to tonight's special meeting of the Inland Wetlands Commission. It is January 12th, 2021. It is 7:02 p.m. Roll call, all present say aye. Starting myself, Keith Romano, as chairman, our vice chairman and secretary, Lois Spence.
Here.
Jim Stewart, who is our treasurer and a licensed engineer architect, of the state of Connecticut.
Not an architect, but okay.
I'm sorry, I got engineer.
Not
And
today. anyway.
Surveyor. I got landscape architect. All right. Clark Ingris.
Aye.
Aye. Ross Mastroacco.
I'm here.
BJ Hall.
Here.
Denise Halstead, our wetlands agent.
Here.
And Donna Szynski, our office.
Manager.
I'm looking at the thing. So. Office manager, and Sarah Stroud, recording secretary.
Yeah.
Okay, great. First thing we're going to do is, it looks like, well, just state that this is a deliberation session only. So there'll be no comment asked or expected from anybody other than commissioners and staff present. Also, I want to state that I have watched the portion of December 16th meeting that I had to leave for a moment, and I'm going to ask Clark, did you watch the hour of the meeting or so that you missed?
Yes, I did.
All right, great. Moving forward, we're going to go through a bunch of topics of discussion to help guide us through this meeting tonight. We are not expected or really prepared to make a final decision in this meeting, but to kind of come up with some kind of, some ideas and whatnot. So I'll go ahead and just read along this thing here. This is for IWC application number IWC-2020-03R, 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive. The Monroe Inland Wetlands Commission has received, conducted, and completed a public hearing on application number IWC 2020-03-R for a remediation plan and site development plan for a 72-acre industrial zone parcel located within the Pepper Street Industrial Park, involving the illegal excavation of earth material and the impact to on-site wetlands and vernal pools. The two parcels are identified as 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive. This application was submitted in response to IWV-2014-04 and IWV-2014-05. First topic to discuss.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. If I could there's just something I'd like to bring to the commission's attention before you get started with the discussion topics.
Hold on, and thank you, but I forgot to mention you in the beginning. Also tonight with us is Barbara Schellenberg, who is our town legal counsel. Now, speak.
Okay. I just wanted to advise the commission, I think most of you are aware, but it is really your province to decide which, if any, expert testimony you find credible. Okay, that is your decision. However, when you are considering the expert testimony, you really should just focus on the reports and testimony that are within the expert's purview, which basically comes down to their scientific expertise or engineering expertise or what have you. If any of the experts opined on legal matters or procedural matters for the commission, that's not something that's within their expertise. And so you really should not focus on any of that if it's in a written report or in their testimony. So I just wanted to clarify that for the commission before you start your deliberations.
Thank you. Okay, going along the topics. The first topic was the combined remediation plan and site development plan the appropriate type of application to submit to address the violations identified and IWV-2014-04 and IWV-2014-05 in accordance with the Section 14 of the Monroe Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Regulations. So referring to the combination of a remediation and a new application. And so any thoughts? I'm going to panel the commission as I always do, starting with Commissioner Spence on this topic. Any thoughts, questions, or discussion? Rather, it's not questions, but discussion.
Yes. I personally think that the two should be separated, just as several of our experts did also. It's too hard to try to monitor progress. It's too hard to because of the different timelines and the different requirements that go with each application or with each portion of the application. I feel that they don't really belong together. It makes things very, very technical, very difficult to monitor and police and to decide on our part, because there's just too much technicality involved in the whole thing. That's pretty much all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Stewart?
I don't have a problem with it being combined. I think that at least it gives us an idea what they're proposing for the property. If they came in with the remediation first, you wouldn't necessarily know what they're proposing to do. So I guess I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Commissioner Gingras?
I actually agree with Commissioner Stewart on this, because if they had just done the remediation, we would have probably, still had maybe 4 or 5 years of them doing that and still have no idea what they were really going to be planning. And I actually like that better, because at least I know, they're not going to start another hole in another part of the property, like the previous owner, has made, during this last 20 years or 15 years or 16 years this property has been worked on.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Massaraco.
I agree with both of you. But I do agree with Lois. I think it's just too much. We'd have to meet every night in order to hammer this thing out and make it correct right to the end, so that we're all happy in the end. That's about it.
Hey, Commissioner Hall, thoughts?
Yes, I do have a number of concerns in the same area. If we're to use the submitted plans as the guide for this, there is a clear separation for the, call it the planning and zoning section as opposed to the remediation section. And if we were able to exclude plan sheets 2.50 through 2.7, leaving those to approval from the planning and zoning, I might feel we were within our purview to make a decision. But I've been following the planning and zoning meetings, the discussions and comments that have come out of those meetings, and it seems we, as the Inland Wetland Commission, have a risk of conflicting with planning and zoning, or maybe conflicting is too strong a word, but not being aligned with the decision they're trying to make and they're waiting for us to make. So I'm going to say my largest concern is the inability to separate that is the site development from the remediation of the site in the submitted application as such. And I call again to the specific plan sheets. If we could separate those out, say we approve all of this part of the plan, but not that part, maybe we have something to work with, but otherwise we're in conflict of approving something that the planning and zoning might not feel they could approve. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Just want to note that, recall that this was, Denise had mentioned this in the very beginning, or early on in this hearing, that this could be an issue. But at that point, it didn't really trigger any, change or discussion about it at that point. That being said, I appreciate everybody's input on this topic, and we'll move on to the next one, which is a pretty important one for everybody to comment on.
Wait a minute, Keith, can we discuss that a little further? Can we have a little back and forth
On
or is that like a kind of a consensus vote? Because I think
there's not really a vote. It's more of everybody just speaking out to everybody else what they're fine. It's like we're just kind of discussing it. If you want to continue to discuss it more or comment, certainly we could do that, as long as we don't like spend a ton of time, going over the same stuff. But go ahead, Commissioner Spence.
Well, since it's deliberations, I mean, that's what deliberations are. It's back and forth trying to figure out where everybody is. It's not just a cut and dry kind of a thing. The reason I was saying what I was, now that we know, we do have a conceptual idea as to what the plan is for the building, for the eventual development of the project. We do have an idea now, but the timelines are extremely difficult. Remediation, we know we've had very much experience with this, where there have been combined applications and they've turned into nightmares because there's a timeline for the development and there's a timeline for applying for recording things on land records. There's all kinds of requirements for development, but it's completely separate for the remediation. The remediation frequently gets put on hold until everything else is done with the development, but the development has 5 years. So that's why I'm saying what I am. I agree with the idea that we know, or at least they've given us a concept of what it is that they want to ultimately do with the project. But linking it to the remediation just seems a little bit too risky for me, because I don't think that it's gonna work properly, and I don't think that well, we'll visit timelines later on, but anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because it's extremely difficult when you have the two together. Remediation is the part that ends up getting forgotten about, regardless of whatever it is they say. There's always ways to get around it, and if we just have too many problems with it, trying to make this happen. So anyway, that's it. I won't beat the dead horse.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners, just chime in if you have any last comments on this topic.
I do have a last comment.
Go ahead.
That I'm with Commissioner Spence on this, that we need to focus on the remediation. I personally don't feel qualified to make a decision regarding the site development. That's the purview of planning and zoning. We need a separation here that is making it very difficult for us. So I think our focus needs to be on remediation and all those elements that go into remediation. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to topic 2. Was the application determined to be complete in accordance with Section 7 of the MIWWR? Start with, I'm sorry?
Say that again? I missed it.
Okay, sorry. Was the application determined to be complete in accordance with Section 7 of the MIWWR?
Oh, okay, that's the regulations.
Monroe Inland Wetlands Watercourse Regulations. Sorry,
Thank you.
that's the way I have it down here. So
Sorry, we did abbreviation. Yes, I did an abbreviation. If you looked above, Keith, that's why, instead of constantly saying it.
Was it complete? There are many, many, many holes. The applicant, I have to say, bent over backwards to tried to keep coming up with new ways to approach the things that we had asked or discussed about. But there's a lot of things we still don't know. There's a lot of details. The devil is still in the details, and the details aren't there. So, I mean, we could discuss the details that we're missing. I don't know if you want to do that at this point, but some of the details that are missing, there are many, many of them. So in my opinion, no, it's not complete.
Okay, Commissioner Stewart.
I guess I'd look from input from Denise, whether she thinks it's complete.
Okay, well, we'll get to her. Or actually, Denise, why don't you should chime in now.
Hold on, let me get my little, I looked in specifics of section 7. I mean, it's all of section 7, but I actually started looking into some of the specifics. And, if you look into section 7.3, that one, where hold on, I've got to pull out the application, the regs. Because I know someone's going to ask me the question, so I want to have it in front of me. Seven 3 states the application shall contain such information as is necessary for fair and informed determination thereon by the commission. All information submitted in the application review shall be considered factual. The failure of the applicant and his or her representative to provide correct and complete information shall be sufficient grounds for the revocation of any permit under the regulations and/or for actions to be imposed in accordance with section 14. The way I look at it is we have a lot of questions about details. We've talked about, in the past meetings, there was talk is, oh, well, we could always make that a condition of approval or this, that. So I'm looking at it a little bit is, while it's complete in many respects, there's a lot of, like Lois said, there's a lot of details that I feel are lacking, missing, need a little bit more explanation. And, that would be something that we'd have a hard time, trying to make sure we hit all these conditions if we accept. Looking at section 7.5, which says in terms, did they submit 2 truly viable alternatives that address the violation? Yes, there were 2 plans that were submitted. Were those, we can't say that there could be many, many different alternatives. That's the 2 that were submitted, but, we skimmed over. We do know that the intervener had thrown one out too, just as another thought. So, I don't feel that we looked at that quite as much as maybe we should have. This one I can't answer, but section 7.6 talks about completeness and not having to list pages of conditions. Once again, I'm concerned that, if it gets approved, we're gonna have to really work hard on our conditions of approval. And then the last one is in regards to analysis of chemical or physical characteristics of any fill material. I can't answer that. We have our experts. I really don't know if that was fully hit. Those are my thoughts, Keith.
All right, thank you.
And
So
Jim.
back to, I'm sorry, you done? You were done, Denise, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I was saying to
Back
Jim.
Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Denise. I guess after hearing that, it sounds like they provided us enough for us to vote, in my opinion. And I wouldn't support saying we're not going to approve it because the application is incomplete at this point. I think that should have been done at the beginning of the hearing, not after how many, 6 months. At least that's my experience. Someone provides you information, you give them an opportunity to get you what you need. If they don't, it's incomplete, you deny it, and they go back. I don't think it's appropriate to do at this point. But we may be, and if we don't have enough information to approve it, and they haven't provided that, then that's a reason for denial.
And Jim, I'm not saying that it's incomplete. I'm just saying there's just the questions that.
Understood completely.
Okay, you brought up something there that maybe Barbara could opine on about the completeness of an application. As Commissioner Stewart was saying, at the very beginning, we should have known that, or who becomes responsible to point that out? I mean, is it the applicant's responsibility to be sure that the application is complete, or is the commission's responsibility to identify that it's not complete towards the beginning of the process?
As I recall, this was an issue that was addressed a number of times during the public hearing, and you also had expert testimony on the issue. So I do think the issue was raised and discussed a number of times, and so it's up to the commission to decide if it is satisfied with the status or not.
Okay. So then we're on to, I'm sorry, Commissioner Gingras, I believe.
I don't know. I've seen all those plans that they submitted to us. Sorry, I must be getting distortion.
Ross, you're giving us some feedback.
All right. I mean, from what they've given us, the two different plans, I think they've given us enough information to make a decision. I just don't know if it's going to be enough. Like, I don't know if it's going to even fulfill what they wanted to do, because I think it's going to take too long for us to even see the results, because it's such a long process, that is what they kept saying to us. I don't know. I mean, the best thing I could say is that we're gonna have the vote on this no matter what.
Okay. Is there anything else about the completeness of the application?
I think it's as complete as we're gonna see.
Okay.
I mean, I know they asked us to, do our thing where we add a condition of approval, but I don't know. I mean, they did give us almost everything that they wanted to do to mediate or remediate the problems at that site.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Masteracco?
I think the plans were complete. I think there's enough information on the plans for me to make a decision. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hall?
I think as far as Section 7 and those areas that specifically refer to inland wetlands, I think we received a tremendous amount of information, very complete information, both conflicting, concurring, interveners' viewpoint. I think in that area we have more than enough information to identify conditions for approval and make some decisions. My concern remains the same, is that in addition to all of that, we received sections of their application that we really aren't the right people to rule on that. Things that belong to planning and zoning in those pages I'd referred to.
Mm-hmm.
That's my comment.
Thank you. The only thing I have to say on this one is that I'm not inclined to add any conditions of approval to the plan. It's really, really extensive plan. And we've seen some things where we've put, one or two condition of approval. I've seen some things where we've put, a dozen or maybe more. This would be a daunting task to put a lot of conditions of approval on this, to this application. Especially because there's so many different areas that things can be put on it. So that's just my thoughts on it. I'm not going to, go either way in regards to it. I'm not going to discourage anybody from wanting to have a condition on their approval, but I would just be concerned if we throw so many onto it that we're basically like rewriting the plan in a way. That's all my comment on that, Commissioner Hall.
Yes, so I might comment on that. I share your concern about making this too complex to monitor, to execute. I do think there are a couple of areas very key to the execution of the remediation that maybe could use a little more language. So I'm with you on making it too hard, too complex with conditions of approval. I just think there's a couple of things that maybe later, decisions that came later in the process were put into the plan later that could use a little clarification.
Okay. Commissioner Spence?
There are a lot of holes and details that can't be fixed by conditions of approval. There are some very, very important things that were brought up that we don't know. And if we approve this plan the way it is, or even with some conditions, there are so many open areas that, I mean, if you want lists, I can start listing some, but things that we really need to know before we approve a plan. For instance, the conservation easement. We have no idea who the conservation easement is going to be owned by, what it's actually going to mean, what activities are permitted and not permitted. There are many different types of conservation easements. That's just one small section of it, but that's a big section of it. And there's details, big ones, that the pumping of the groundwater well, from the groundwater well to the southeast corner of the wetland, it was pointed out at the last hearing that there's no details on how that's being done, where it's being put. Is it going to be in open air, which means it freezes solid and bursts during the winter time? There's no details on that. There's no details on how it's going to be pumped. It's a 1,500-foot span at least. Is that even possible to do that far away? And plus, it's going right across some of the development portion of the property on 16th Cambridge. So without how that's going to be put in, that could be a major issue. There's just all of our experts weren't really sure that. No, I can't say that. I won't go there yet. I know that this is such a big thing. We're trying to play nature, and I don't know that we can do that. We need to do a lot more honing. I think it's possible. I think we've got a really good start, but I don't think it's ready to be continued on yet. Much as I don't want to see another several months spent on this, I think we need to in order to do it right at this moment. So that's it. The details are still very much missing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners on this topic of the complete application? Okay, we'll move along to topic number 3. Does the remediation plan demonstrate that it will substantially restore the hydrology of wetlands and vernal pool number 2? This is something you're asking yourself, so to speak, and also could also say to what degree. So to what degree do you feel that it will just, restore hydrology? So again, start with Commissioner Spence.
Well, I'm not an expert, so I'm going to go along with 2 of the experts that said that there's 50%, at maximum, there's 50% chance. Because there's so much we don't know about the actual hydrology of those wetlands. We don't know whether 3, vernal pool 3 and wetland 2 are connected. We don't know if the trickle down theory would work because we don't know the hydrologic conditions of wetland 2. So maybe even though as good as it sounds, maybe the pumping of the groundwater well to the southeast corner of the wetlands, that might not do what we want it to do. I don't trust at all the liner. I trust the liner if it were not on a piece of property that was not slated for development in the future. But having that clay liner go underneath at least 1/2 of the property that's going to be developed next door, that's a major flag for me. Because as soon as that property gets sold to somebody else, they don't have to pay attention to anything that was done in the past by a previous owner. Once they own it, they own it. And unless there's some way that we can have land records, some restrictions or something put on land records, but that wasn't part of the hearing. So we can't do that, and we can't even use that as a condition. So I don't trust the liner. I think there's a better way of doing it without filling it up to 460 feet. I think we can do it. I think we should try it another way, but that's also another discussion. That's not restoring the hydrology. If we can't get that clay liner to be completely off the developable portion of the property, we can't rely on its, the word I'm looking for, integrity over the course of the lifetime. And to do all this work on it and to have it be breached or have it be destroyed in any way in time would just be a shame. So no, I don't think the plan as presented will restore the hydrology, and 2 of our experts didn't think so either.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Spence. Commissioner Stewart.
I guess I'm slightly torn by the whole thing. I agree with the experts that it's difficult or impossible to recreate Mother Nature and restore this. On the same breath, if you just put that ahead of you and say you can't restore Mother Nature, you're not going to try, and you might as well just give up on that vernal pool completely. And the applicant did say that they would be willing to come back and prove it's working over the years. That being said, they couldn't come up with an example of where anything like this has been done before. So that makes me very, very uncomfortable. And if it's never been done before, I don't want to be the first guy to try it, to be honest with you. Also, the applicant, I think, was being a little disingenuous with his original plan of bringing in an extra, I don't know how many feet, an extra 30 feet of fill that was later determined as not being necessary, which shows to me that they're looking to be in a money-making venture to do this, not only to restore the wetlands. So I lose some faith in their experts in that case. Our expert believes that it has a very low chance of success, and I tend to believe him. I think it's the trying to get it to be irrigated with groundwater over the next 10 years before this project is done is time consuming. It's difficult, if not impossible, to track rainfall. it would take a PhD full time to try to restore that thing with water pumping. I don't see that being realistic, especially if the town's not out there checking it on a weekly basis. I also have my doubts that since it's going to be a building lot at some point, even if it is successful, they're going to come in, they're going to want to pave and put a building on the entire thing, and then they're going to, want to eventually try to get that water to continue to go to the vernal pool. And I know that it's not part of this application, and we could address it then. But I don't see, once you've spent all this money building this place up and leveling it out, that you're then not going to put a building on it. I have a problem with that. And I think that covers my thoughts for that question.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Massaraco?
Well, I remember hearing some way back 30 to 50% chance that those wetlands would improve. I'm not a gambler. I think we should just not happy about bringing in so much material and the odds of it benefiting that area, the wetlands. I'm not sold on it. That's all.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gingrich, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hall. I'm sorry, I don't know what.
I heard also the odds, and I'm not a gambler, but I think the risk of doing nothing is worse than the risk of allowing this to proceed under certain conditions to rehydrate the wetland. I think the key risk in rehydrating the wetland, whether it's successful or not, it relies on pumping water for 1,500 feet on a long system of pipes and pumps to get it up to that wetland. So I have great concerns that the mechanism to rehydrate would be there. I think that the commission's primary purview is the rehydration of that wetland. I don't think our concern should be the site development, most of the fill, the content of the fill. I believe that that's our real goal here, is to make sure that wetland is remediated. So my concern will remain focused on what it takes to get the best possible chance to remediate the wetland. And without additional conditions around that well and pumping that water and monitoring that hydration, I would have some real serious concerns about moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gingrich, I know I went out of order, but back to the question of, does the remediation plan demonstrate that it will substantially restore the hydrology of wetlands of vernal pool number 2?
From what I'm going to go along with Ross here. I remember hearing they said something at 30% chance or 40, 50% chance of success. I'm not a gambler, but they need to do something, and that's the whole idea of this remediation. But I remember our expert actually saying it takes Mother Nature thousands of years to restore the hydrology. What they're going to try to do in 10 years, we might never see this restored back to what it was originally, doing, because it's been, for 16 years they dug a big hole in the ground and took away all the chances of any of the Mother Nature flowing water that way anyway. So I don't know, but we do have to let them try. I just don't know if it's going to work. I don't believe it's going to work. That's my opinion.
Thank you. So I guess it's pretty clear at this point that we won't be having our annual commission outing at the casinos. No one likes to gamble. All right. Just a little joke there, lighten it up. Okay, so this question is very, very similar to the last one, but it's here. We're going to ask it. Does the remediation plan demonstrate that it'll adequately hydrate wetland number 2 post filling, like after this whole project is completed? So it's just working with, I guess, nature at that point, rain and whatnot. Again, Commissioner Spence.
I think there is a possibility that this kind of plan, this concept could work, but I don't think this plan will do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I need to say, I think that's, afterwards, I don't know, actually, I wouldn't mind seeing a well dug nearby, and if they can figure out how to make that work and keep that going ad infinitum, it would eliminate the need for so much of an underneath liner to funnel the water where it needs to go. And there is another alternative that's worth exploring. I don't know if it would work or not, but it's worth exploring instead of having so much east-west drainage on Enterprise Drive, to have more of it go north-south from 64 Cambridge. They've got the bulk of it all coming from the top part of Independence, which is where it's slated for development in the future, which is part of my complaint about the last one. But if it were, and if we looked at it alternatives that expanded the drainage area to the west, completely parallel to the wetland now, that might do, it might not do exactly what we need it to do, but it might do something, and I think it's worth trying, and definitely looking at alternatives, but I don't think that one will do it, especially with the opportunity that it can have to be reached in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Spence. Commissioner Stewart.
I guess it's similar to my previous response. I think there's a slight chance of it working. I don't think it's worth the amount of work and the amount of fill it takes to bring in there to get that chance. And I think there's if possible, other alternatives of wetland creation to mitigate the loss.
Al, thank you. Commissioner Gingras?
I don't believe it's gonna work. Not the way they have that set up. They just, it's just, doesn't look like it's gonna, when you start developing, you're probably gonna mess the entire water course anyway, going from the development into whatever area they funnel the water to. Probably not gonna work.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Commissioner Massaraco?
I really don't believe that parking lot water is going to keep that wetlands healthy at all. In the wintertime, they're dumping salt everywhere, and that stuff's just going right into the wetlands. I don't feel confident during the project. I don't feel confident after the project. That's all.
Okay. Commissioner Hall?
I have my concerns. We've heard from the experts, pro and con. We've seen the drawings, we've looked at the elevations. We've heard all the logic applied to this, to those who say it will work and who won't work. So we've heard from the experts, and we're not the experts. We can't really say, but the biggest problem I have is we would have to wait too long, or let's say the town would have to wait too long, because 10 years from now, we may not be around. But I think the duration of the project to get to the result is too long for us to be comfortable saying, yes, it will work. I'm sorry, for myself to say, yes, it will work or it will not work. Back to you.
Thank you. My comment here is, I believe that any upgrade filling from the wetlands is ultimately, one way or another, going to help that water-starved area. Do I think that we need to restore it to what it was, God given to the earth? That I'm not 100% sure is needed to make any type of a positive effect. I don't, I'm not too concerned. I think Commissioner Masteracco, to your comment, I believe that now granted, it's another wetlands area that's impacted, but I believe all that improved water will be treated and put into that already built retention pond over off of by the corner of Independence. So I don't know if this plan, I could be wrong, but I didn't see in the plan that this parking lot water would be going directly to the wetlands area that we're discussing. But that's just what I remember. I remember hearing that, this wetlands has been affected, but it is still a wetlands. It's not like it's not been dug up and removed. It's not been completely, drained of all moisture. It's just not functioning. It's not at the level as it was before this started. So anything that would bring it back, regardless of the degree, anything that would be an improvement would be obviously a positive thing. And there's only so much that can be done. As far as the time frame goes, I hate to try to criticize the 10-year time frame too much based on the fact of how much material right now they're prescribing in the application to bring in. Because the last thing we want to have happen is that put too much of a, not a restriction, but make them have to perform this so aggressively that if they can't find the material, they're just going to keep having to come back to us and ask for an extension or a change of, what do you call it? And not an adjustment, but amendment, because, hey, the market, they can prove to us there's no material. Where's the material? Do we want to force them to search and source material like 50 miles away and then have, dirt in the back of a truck, because to meet a strict timeline? I don't think that's good I don't think that's a good, result. I don't think that's good for the environment. I think this is something that needs to be done, in a regional way, that makes, economical sense for everybody involved. But that's all I have to say about this particular topic. Any other comments on this topic?
I guess I don't understand quite what you mean. Are you not happy with the 10 years, or you just think that the whole thing is so nebulous because of difficulty to source material that it might not ever happen?
No, I get the answer. I'm sorry. Finish. I'm sorry. Good finish.
No, but I just want clarification on what it is exactly that you meant.
What I mean is that the length of time that they're prescribing to do this project, I don't think is very out of line. Now, what I mean by that is that if you take the amount of material coming in that they propose has to come in, and the time frame, and you do it, that's a certain amount of material every year. That's kind of like an estimate based on current activity outside of the marketplace, right? So what's happening in development around where stuff will need to be brought to this, the proper stuff brought in. You can't force it if it's not there. If we say, if someone says, well, I think 10 years is too long, we want it done in 5 years. Well, in 5 years, they might not be able to reasonably find that much material. Now, let's say they came up with a plan later on that, let's just say it was half the material, right? Then they wouldn't need 10 years, they would need 5 years, right? So I think it's a fair amount of time allocated for them to get this material brought into the site process and properly placed. And if we don't, like, again, I hate to see them, we kind of constrict them on the time frame and then have them, have to come back to us because it just wasn't feasible. We don't want to make it so that we want to give them what they think is the amount of time they need as a fair amount of time. So that's all I'm saying, is that I'm not saying I'm okay with 10 years. I'm saying if we want to make a condition that we want it done in 3 years, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they'll be right back in front of us asking for amendments, and that doesn't help what we're trying to do. That's all I meant.
Okay. Is the time limit one of your other topics to discuss? Because we seem to be in time limits, which really isn't on topic. But if time limits is a topic of discussion, then we should visit it there. If not, we're there. So maybe we
Yeah.
We don't
Well,
have a bullet,
we don't have it specifically, but it kind of could be. It could be here, it could be in the next one, but we could just continue discussing the time frame if everybody's comfortable with that. So go ahead, Lois. If you started, if you want to
Okay.
continue.
I hear what you're saying, and yes, it makes sense. It takes time to source all this material, especially if it's natural or very specific material. Yes, it does take time. But I question the need for that much material. Everybody agrees that the hole needs to be filled in, but the question is, does it really need to come all the way up to 460 or 450, whatever it is that is being proposed? The hole itself will be filled at like 411, 412, and it was a question that was specifically asked, and Mr. Soley said that it could be filled within 3 to 5 months. Now that would bring it up to grade, or pretty close to the actual grade of the rest of 64 Cambridge. And so if we looked at alternatives that would not require so much filling on Independence, and the alternative being doing more filling perhaps on whatchamacallit, on 64, but on the eastern side, that might bring up some grade. It requires less material.
Lois,
What?
just for 1 second.
Yeah.
You're basically into the next topic.
Oh, am I?
Yeah,
Sorry.
so if you want to just anything that we're talking about, this 10-year timeline, just specifically to that, and then just so we don't miss what we continued on this topic for. So
Okay, so do you want me to wait till we get to the next topic, or do you want me to?
that would be great. But anybody else wants to discuss anything about the timeline that they're prescribing in the application, just go ahead and chime in.
Anyway, can I finish? I have one more comment. And
Okay.
then if we were to divide it up to these smaller sections, we could see how things were going within, say we did the first portion in 3 years, knowing that the hole itself could be filled within the first year. And there was other work that could be done on 64 and some filling. See where we are at that. See what happens with the pumping of the groundwater well. See where we are, where the wetlands are in 3 years at that point. I'm just picking up an arbitrary timeline. Divide it so that it's manageable chunks of time with observable changes or not. And so that was my comment on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think anybody else want to comment on the time frame? Commissioner Stewart, you were going to say something?
I was. I agree with you. If the project is approved, they would need 10 years. And I would expect that depending on the economic environment, they could be coming back in 10 years saying, you know, we're short 100,000 cubic yards of material, and what do you want us to do? You know, they're not gonna go out and buy it. So I think I would take at least that amount of time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
If we're building this project.
This project, exactly. Other commissioners, just chime in on this topic. We're all good? All right, topic number 5. Are there prudent and feasible alternatives which may result in a more favorable mitigation or remediation? Actually, I'm sorry, a more favorable remediation alternative? Commissioner Spence.
Well, I just kind of, like you said, I kind of covered that over the last couple of topics, actually.
Yeah.
I do believe that there are, I do believe, number one, it's worth trying, at least in some fashion. And I do believe that there are some alternatives that would require less material, and less time and more observable results. And so, yes, I do believe that there are some alternatives. And I've already spoken about them. I won't belabor it.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Stewart.
Yeah, I think there's an alternative to create, which was brought up by the consultant, to create additional wetlands as a compensation. There you go.
That's it. Okay, Commissioner Gingras.
I actually agree with Commissioner Stewart. If they hired somebody to create an additional wetland, would be probably a better idea than this 10-year plan that might not work.
Is that it? Commissioner Massaraca.
One more thing, we did hear from our experts that wetlands is still a functioning wetland. It's not a vernal pool maybe at this point, but it still has benefits as a wetlands. So there you go.
Thank you. Commissioner Massaraca.
Are there alternatives to what they've given? I think there's many alternatives. Is it something that I can talk about? Like bringing it up to the original grade that was originally okayed by the Wetlands Commission and revisit that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Continue.
He's
I mean,
asking
that's
if
an
you can
option.
set up as an option, I think, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, we can't argue with that. We already okayed that. Why can't we check that out? Revisit what was going to happen to the wetlands back then? If they had brought it down to the proper depth, what would have happened to those wetlands?
They
So,
didn't have an approval, Ross.
no, I thought it was an approval.
No,
No, there's been no approval from us at all.
it was a conceptual plan that was in front of P&Z.
Yeah, they kept talking about it as if it were an approval, but it wasn't an approval. It was not legitimate. It wasn't real.
So the plans that I was asking for to see where they were given the okay to dig to,
That was based on the conceptual approval submitted to P&Z. It never went to wetlands.
I think I know what Ross is trying
But
to
I know,
say.
I know what Russ is saying too.
He's talking about the P&Z approval, correct? The P&Z, what they were approved, the activities that were approved on in back however many years ago, what would have happened? Because I've actually thought about this myself as well. What would have happened if they had stuck true to the plan that was approved? Even though they were staying away from, they weren't required to go to wetlands because they were staying away from the area, even, they did go that way. But if they had stuck to that original approval, what would have happened? And it's almost impossible but it's something you could think about and wonder on. And go ahead, Rod. I just hope I was helping you.
yeah, you were.
But the approval was never for 2 buildings. The approval was conceptual of 2 buildings. and that they would have had to go further and get other approval. The original approval was to take excavation out of our site for the road base for the industrial park.
But that was an
That's
engineered.
Original. That was
The
the
original.
original application that was approved.
That was approved.
Yes.
So anything done, so you have this plan, and anything that was done on the site that deviated from that plan was what was not approved. Anything they did in accordance to the plan, they had permission to do. So I think what the comment here is that if they had not violated their plan and just done what they were approved to do, would they even be here? Right? Right? So
Good question.
now they could have, that approved plan, I think, could have possibly still affected those wetlands. Unforeseen, there's no guarantee you go into the earth what's going to, happen in areas of influence. But, that was, and I think, where are we going? Like, where are we going from there? So they had this permission. Now, granted, they believe they violated both horizontally and vertically. So they did go deeper, and they also went wider into our wetlands area that was affected. Had they, I think I'm taking more to help us, but combining with him. But I wanted to go last, so I'll let you guys continue.
No, just keep going. You're doing good.
So you have a condition that was approved, or a proposed condition that was approved, that would have had possibly some effect on his wetlands, possibly not. I believe at the time, no one thought there would be, but the town gave a permit to do work here on this site. Someone forgot to look at the plan for 10 years, and they went a little too much to one side, a little too deep. Okay. So if the restoration so they took away some of the earth, and a significant amount of earth that was the watershed to this wetlands. So my thought is they replaced that part of it to where the limited disturbance was that was previously approved. That's what was going to be there in eternity if they had followed the plan. That was going to be it. That earth, that part of the mountain, the hill, whatever you want to call it, was going to stay there forever. And that was going to be the watershed that was to remain forever. Without a doubt, absolutely, that should be put back. That should definitely be put back. Do we need to put all the rest of it back? Because my thought is that, because I've done this myself, when I look at a piece of property, I want to optimize my return on my investment. That means I want the most amount of flat space, the least amount of work, that I get approval from my town, bodies, wetlands, P&Z, ZBA, and some towns like that, or this town. And I go in with a plan that I'm going to make the most amount of return on my investment. Okay. And in this particular case, I can't imagine that it wasn't to get the lowest, flattest, most square footage on this site, so I could optimize, my return, long-term return on this property. Now, I understand and I appreciate, and there's nothing to wrong with the business plan that the current property owner has to make money and bring this place back up. There's no, I'm not against that whatsoever. But I think of it in my head is that, why, if the initial purpose was to drop this property down for development, and I know they changed the plan, during the course, but why build it up higher than what the optimal grade was that was originally proposed and approved? So that's my thought on that. Commissioner Hall, did I get to you?
You have now.
Okay.
I believe there are alternatives. We were offered two, I believe, in the applicant's original application. We've heard alternatives from the intervener. Just now you presented a perfectly valid alternative or retro alternative. But is it our job to decide on an alternative? I'm not sure it is, because our job is to decide on the application. So I guess in answer to your question, is there an alternative? Yes. Is it relevant to our decision-making process? Well, that's a good question, because is it better to do nothing? I don't know. I don't think that's the right answer, to do nothing at all. Or two, is it our job to tell the applicant to go look at alternatives?
Commissioner, if I could just help you with that, and anybody else that has any thoughts may know better than me, but no, we're not here to redesign their plan for them, but we are, it's encouraged and it's part of the process to offer up our thoughts and suggestions. Even if we decide not to approve this particular plan, but we have things that we would like, it helps guide them in a reapplication, I guess. But we do not have to say that we want it done this way in an approval or even a denial. We can only offer suggestions of what we would like to possibly see as a change or alternative, or just something. We can't really negotiate it right now, but we can offer them some ideas that we would find more favorable, and then they can work with that if they need to. So that's all I have to say about that. I don't know if that was 100% accurate, but the way I understand it.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Any other commissioners on this topic?
We all want something to happen here. And if they're coming at us with this plan, say there's 5 heads over there and they're all coming up with this one idea. Well, there's another 10 on our side. We come up with some ideas. Maybe we can all kind of just come up with some ideas that are pretty common, pretty close, and get this project moving. That's all.
Idea. Also, I want to mention that the one thing I want to pull in some of the public comments, and I think the biggest public comment, or at least the one that I remember the most, is that people were concerned about the amount of activity, so the amount of truck traffic. That bringing back, every single, almost maybe 80% of what was hauled out of there. I understand it's part of the process. Definitely, no doubt, thousands of truckloads of material have to come back to the site. That is a given. That is a reality that everybody has to face. But the comments we had gotten from the public that I remember were about, how much, trucks are going to be driving through the neighborhood, not their particular neighborhood, but that they'll hear, or, impact on the public infrastructure and whatnot. So I think in the public's interest, if there's a way to make this thing work with, the least amount of material, as mentioned by, I think, most of us on the commission, would obviously be a big, huge benefit. That's all I want to say. That I just want to remind everybody that we did have public comment about trucks, amount of trucks.
If I may, that's not in our purview. We're not allowed to consider truck traffic, or yes, the public comment was there concerning that, but that's not something we're not allowed to consider. That is not our job. The amount of material, yes, as it relates to the wetlands and to the project. but not to the truck traffic. I just wanted to clarify this. Not that we would base a decision on that, but
No.
that is something that we are not allowed to even really consider.
Yeah.
So, but there was public comment having to do with not conditioning an application to death to the point where a new application is much more expedient. So that was just public comment, which had really nothing to do with this previous topic. So I just want to bring that up.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the reminder too. All right, so on this topic, I think, is there anybody else who wants to talk about or discuss if they thought there was any feasible or prudent alternatives? All right. We are on to the next topic, which is, does the IWC find it acceptable for the conservation easement language to be finalized after the decision and or like as a condition of approval? Commissioner Spence.
Touched on that a little bit.
No, as I said before, there are so many different kinds of conservation easements. We really need to see the wording, since nothing can really be done outside of the hearing. Once the hearing is closed, we're really not allowed to consider anything more. And the wording of what's allowed to be done, there are certain things that we might like to see be done on that conservation or within that easement. And we can't have any input once the hearing is closed. So my answer to that is no.
So you think it's not acceptable for the conservation easement language to be finalized after the decision?
That is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure we got that straight. Commissioner Stewart.
No.
Okay, Commissioner Gingras.
Sorry. No.
No, okay, Commissioner Massaraco.
Looking at the conservation easement now, it's like a desert. There's nothing living in it. Little bit of scrubby weeds around the perimeters. I think it's something that really should be, on the top of the list.
Mhm.
That's all.
Okay, Commissioner Hall.
Well, the conservation easement was presented to us at a very high level. A drawing of where it would occur. But like Commissioner Spence, I'm concerned that there was no functional operational management detail attached to that. So I would have to say no.
Okay. And the last topic is about pollution, and I'm missing something here. It says we're to discuss the findings of the intervener's amended petition and allegations of unreasonable pollution, et cetera. Barbara, did you want to help me with that one?
Yeah, the commission needs to discuss whether it feels that the intervener's petition has presented. Basically, the commission needs to determine whether, as presented in the intervener's petition, the proposed conduct proposed by the applicant is reasonably likely to have the effect of unreasonably polluting and or impairing the air, water, or other resources of the state or destroying the public trust in them.
I go first.
That's just something separate that the,
Mark is waving his hands.
All right, let's let Barbara finish.
I'm
all right,
going
and
on with
obviously you
this
need
goes
to,
back to day one. This goes back to day one. They literally did not prove anything except to filibuster the entire 6 months. They gave us a lot of opinions, and a lot of opinions, and a lot of opinions, and a lot of stuff about how good they, what they could do and stuff. They gave us nothing. There was no evidence. And I was so fed up with some of the speeches that they were doing. No, they did nothing. That's my vote. No, their petition is a no.
Okay.
Is that really how you feel, Clark?
All right, so let's go through, start with Commissioner Spence.
I'm a little confused. I didn't think it was our job to decide whether or not the intervener is right. Can you clarify, Barb? I don't understand really what this is all about. I thought the intervener's position was just to help us. He was concerned that it could be polluting, and he was bringing in extra experts so that we would have more information to work with. But I didn't think we had to conclude anything about his position.
You do,
Clarify?
actually.
We do?
Yes, you have to decide whether you think the evidence prove the allegations that are in the intervener's petition.
And can I ask what is the result of that decision? What does it affect?
Well, that's up to the commission to decide if it believes that the activities proposed cause the unreasonable pollution. Basically what I just read to you. If you have to look at it's not just what you believe, it's whether there's evidence in the record that proved the allegation.
Okay.
That's what you have to consider.
I would like to go last on this one. Give me a chance to think about this.
Yeah, this is not an easy topic. All right, let's go with Commissioner Stewart.
I didn't think what they're proposing would irreparably harm the wetlands. My feeling is it's not going to guarantee, there's no guarantee it's going to improve them. So if that makes any sense.
Okay. Commissioner Gingras.
You got my opinion already. The only thing I can say to you is they should have been doing this 10 years ago. They waited till there was a new owner who wanted to create something. They did nothing. They sat there and watched all that stuff going on for over 10 years. They might have had evidence back then, but I don't see any evidence of the new owner doing anything to pollute, the environment. He's just trying to fix his problem now.
I understand. Okay, we'll go back to Commissioner Spence. I think she raised her hand.
Well, this is just in response to Clark's comment. I don't believe that land was sold off to the new owner for quite a while. I believe a majority of the work that was done on 64 Cambridge was done while that property was under different ownership. So just to clarify that that's my belief as far as I
Yeah.
understand.
I think it was the same.
He
It was the
couldn't
same
do
owner.
Hmm?
I believe it was the same owner.
I believe you're correct. So I
Yeah.
don't know when that land was sold off,
Anyway,
but anyway. ahead.
Commissioner Massaraco.
Well, the only facts we have to go on is they did some test holes. They tested the soil, they tested the water, and they found absolutely nothing. Could it happen down the road as they're backfilling and they start bringing in all this material? Yeah, it could happen if somebody's not paying attention. I'll stop there.
Okay, Commissioner Hall.
Well, Commissioner Gingras was commenting on the last question here. I went back and reread the verified amended notice from the intervener and applied that back to all the comments, input, subject matter experts we've had from the intervener. And I guess my answer would be that doesn't change anything in my opinion. I'd say no.
No pollution. Okay. I,
There's no-
Commissioner Spence, did you have?
No, I'll go really last. You first.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we had the reports, I think, from multiple different entities. Multiple people looked at it. We had inquiry to DEP that I think cleared, I believe, cleared the site of any major problems, or at least, at this moment. And it's also kind of a little bit out of our, jurisdiction too. I mean, the material coming in, like we've mentioned before, or it's even there. The question is, and the question about, is this, we're talking about existing or future, like what's going to, as far as pollution can happen at any, stage of the game. But I think that there's going to be more than enough controls, or more controls than we could ever prescribe moving forward on what happens as far as material comes in. Barbara, are you going to comment?
The only thing I just want to clarify, and I know this is a little difficult to understand, but the standard is unreasonable pollution. Okay? Again, unreasonably polluting and or impairing the air, water, or other resources of the state, or destroying the public trust in them. Okay, that is the standard.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Spence, you're last.
This is a hard one because I agree with everybody. The experts did not come up with any pollution that they could find with their drilled wells and their water sampling and that kind of thing. So from that standpoint, I have to say no. But it was also pointed out that sometimes the wells were not necessarily, or I'm not, there was so much testimony and my head was swimming. That it's possible that the wells were not in a position to receive runoff or groundwater from areas that had been previously filled. I do believe that that was one of the major points of the interveners, was that the previous filling was, he felt it was suspect. We could find no evidence thereof. So when it came to doing that, I have to say the experts, we have to stand behind the experts because we're not, it definitely did not apply to the upper wetlands, wetland 2, 3, and 4. But one, there's a possibility, but it wasn't polluted, it was just changed. So I guess I would have to say no, I don't think that there was any proof of pollution, unreasonable pollution.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, to wrap that one up too, I mean, between, we had, not only did we have intervener testimony, I can't remember really where they were leaning, but between the applicant and our professional, third party professional, they were kind of in agreement. So there was really nothing presented to us that would make us have to even really consider this at all. I mean, as far as any type of unreasonable pollution. I mean, I think that would have been like, what do you call it? Rudolph's red nose, like just flaring, it would have just been like, whoa, we would all just been gasping. Oh my God, this is great. We never had that experience in the whole time of this hearing that there's anything that we should be really, really concerned about. That's all I have to say. Commissioner Massaraco?
One of the things, we're concentrating on water contamination, soil contamination, but for years, I don't know if this makes any sense, but a lot of air pollution. I remember I used to buy material there when the scale was open, You drive in there in dry summer days, and I don't even live that far from there. You could see just a dust bowl. You can't see from one end to the other. It's that dusty when the equipment was working. Now, it's not going to be a quarry like it was, but there's going to be a lot of material that's going to be moving around. And there is a lot of, if you call that air pollution, it carries a long way. That's it.
Thank you.
Once again, may I bring up something? I agree with you 100%, Ross, but unfortunately, that wasn't discussed in the hearing. And it wasn't discussed what air pollution and dust could do to the wetlands. Was not discussed in the hearing. So as much as I agree with you, and I saw that dust cloud and it was unbelievable. And I've seen the wetlands along the sides at times that were where the greenery was coated with like 1/8 of an inch of dust. All of the greenery was just absolutely smothered in dust, but we didn't bring it up during the hearing. And no experts mentioned it, so I don't know that we can consider that.
And
I don't.
Sorry, continue. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm done.
No, I mean, I think that topic was brought up in the NOV, but not in anything else. The original NOV that went out did talk about that dust, but that was the only time.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue.
No.
And not only was it not, thank you, Lisa. Not only was it not brought up in the hearing, I honestly don't believe it's an issue. It's just a condition of development, and rock crushing operations everywhere have a similar situation. There's almost, I do remember they had some dust control measures. There's only so much that you need. That's really just not even here. It's not even, I think, an issue, but we've basically hit the topics that we need to discuss tonight. Anybody, we're still open, we're still deliberating. Anybody want anything to discuss, any thoughts, any of the commissioners, just go ahead, just fire away. A wrap up thought, if somebody has anything they want to, wrap up, this whole thing.
This is the last opportunity for tonight.
No, we have one more. We'll have one more meeting on this.
Well, we don't have any more questions.
I don't know. I mean, we have.
Never mind.
It's only been an hour and a half, and it's been faster than I thought it was going to be. So
I was just so excited. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to end this. I'm just saying, we can't just. I don't want to sit here, everybody just looking at the screen, going, "Well, is anybody going to say anything next?" We picked the topics that we needed to talk about. We've opened up.
The applicant at the last meeting suggested that the bond estimate that the town engineer came up with was excessive and way above the bond estimate that was submitted. I looked at it. I thought it was what the town engineer came up with was extremely reasonable. And if I was doing it, I would have made it higher. The one particular item that I think is the largest item is the topsoil seeding, fertilizing, mulching the entire disturbed area. They are proposing originally a 10% per square, a 10 cent per square foot number. The town engineer is proposing a 30 cents per square foot number. According to my calculations, 30 cents a square foot covers the purchase of the topsoil. I didn't see any topsoil on that site that could be used. 10 cents a square foot is hydro seeding. So I guess I would say if this was to be approved, the bond estimate should be increased to 40 cents a square foot, and that doesn't even cover spreading the topsoil. So there's my comment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart. We have another item that covers the bond, but we were holding off until we decided whether this is going to be an approval or not. But you breached the subject, And I don't see why we couldn't let the rest of the commissioners chime in if they had any comments about the bond. Commissioner Spence.
I appreciate Jim's expertise in this area, and I appreciate hearing his opinion. So that's really all I'm going to say, is that I appreciate his opinion, and I think it's a good opinion, my estimate.
Yep. Thank you. Commissioner Gingras.
I agree with Lois and Jim.
Thank you. Commissioner Massaraco.
I think it's fine. I think the bond it could be a little bit higher, but I think in the end, I think he would have done a bang up job right to the end until the project was finished. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Hall.
I think given the duration of the application, I think that the bond as submitted is fine.
Submitted from the applicant or submitted by the town engineer?
The town engineer.
Thank you. I would agree that Commissioner Stewart's assessment is real, because I've been in this business. But regardless of what the number ends up being, in this particular size of this particular project, and I had a discussion with staff previously, we probably would be fair to the applicant to give a bond release schedule up front, so he doesn't have to come back and we don't have to assess or estimate or try to figure out what we're going to, because they're not going to wait 10 years to ask for it all back. If they hit some spots and they're remediated, they're going to ask for, the bond release. So instead of trying to figure it out down the road, let's predetermine what the releases are going to be at each phase, so that it's just, okay, you've completed the phase. This is here's the check. We have to go through the normal process, but we're not going to sit there and, is it enough? Is it too much? Is he asking for too much? Do we hold back this? It's all predetermined. It'll make our lives easier over the next 10 years dealing with this project. That's just a thought to throw out to you guys. Anything else?
Yes, there was one other thing that kind of has been niggling at my mind. One of the things that was a large topic of discussion between Chris Sullivan and or many of the other wetlands experts, and it was not contested by the applicant, and that was considering whether or not the excavated hole, was a wetland. And let me finish through this before, see if it all can fit and make sense. Russ did not consider it a wetland, and Rima did, and Bill Kenny did not contest it, and let me see, Chris Sullivan did believe that it was a wetland, and that it does fit the criteria according to our definition in our regulations, and it did seem to have some wetland vegetation. Now, if we were, say the project does not go through as presented. Now I don't know which way it's going to go, but if it was not, and it was brought back to us again in two separate pieces, it's possible that that hole would no longer be in our upland review area if we did not declare it a wetland first, which means that we would not have any say or any influence over what went into it. And I don't know, I don't think it was brought up or it wasn't explored fully as to whether or not there's a hydrologic connection between that area where the hole is and wetland 1, because they are on the same plane, so to speak. So there could very well be a hydrologic connection between them. It's going to be important for us to be able to know that what goes in that hole and above the hole is not going to pollute wetland 1. So I was going to make a recommendation that we make a finding that that hole is indeed a wetland, only for the purposes of having it in our upland review in future applications, should there be any. I don't think it changes anything on this particular application, and I don't think it changes anything about our deliberations, except that it would in the future be considered a wetland, and therefore the upland review area would change.
I'll go next on this. I'm going to strongly disagree with that because of the purpose of complicating any complication to come along with it. Now, and let's go back, and if you remember a case of 17, I believe, Enterprise Drive, where the contractor from 12 years earlier had a sedimentation pond that he failed to fill in and became a wetlands. But in that particular situation, he ignored it. He didn't do it there in front. This is still an ongoing process as of, I think, this past summer, or maybe it was a year ago. They know they could not, if that was a sedimentation pond, okay, it's a result of an excavation. They didn't have permission. I mean, there was enough stuff that was maybe done wrong, but they didn't have a right to fill it back in yet. They were coming to us, or coming through the process to fill the property back in. So they didn't let time lapse to let this thing just naturally become a wetlands. It just happened. It just happened that some water collected there. It's the lowest point. Some seeds, blew in from adjacent wetlands, or however the hell it worked. And it just started to show the signs of the beginnings of becoming something. But even if it was, it would be in nobody's interest to have a wetlands down 80 feet below the edge of a road, with a sheer rock face. And it doesn't look like it's ever gonna fill up. So we would just be looking at a hazard that would be unreasonable. Plus, it also takes away the intention of the property from the very beginning, which was, now I understand, I'm not denying the fact that their intentions went way too deep than they're supposed to, but the intention of the property ultimately is to become an industrial or commercial industrial type of, entity that becomes part of the town and helps the town. So I know it was a discussion. I know it was a decision we can make, but with enough challenges on this particular one, I would argue against it for as long as I could. And no offense, it's not to be offensive of your
No offense taken, but I don't think
opinion. I appreciate your opinion, but
go ahead.
I was all set. I was
Okay,
I appreciate your opinion.
No offense taken, first of all. And secondly, I don't think I made myself as clear as I should have. It was my intent always from the beginning that hole be filled. Was not thinking about keeping it as a wetland. It's not a wetland, but it does fit the definition. The only reason I was thinking about considering this, or having us consider it a wetland, was that when it is filled, and it will be filled, I can, I'm 100% sure of that eventually, that we will be able to opine on it. If we don't declare it a wetland now, it will not be within our purview to opine on it when it gets filled in the future, whenever that is. It will not change. Our declaring it a wetland now will not change this application at all. And I don't think any of the experts indicated that it would. The only thing it does change is that it determines a future URA should this project not go through as proposed. And that way we will be able to say something, because what goes into that wetland could very, I mean, what goes into that hole could very well affect in a big way wetland 1. So that was my only reason, not to preserve it as a whole, not by any stretch.
Well, I understand that. I gathered that from, what we were talking about previously through the course of this whole thing. But what my point is that, are we adding a layer of complication that's not necessary? Because as soon as it's filled in, it ceases to become a wetland. So does it fill it after it hits a certain height? It gets classified back to just regular upland. I mean, and on top of it, if in fact they were to not do this project and go forward with it, and it sat for 10 years, it could potentially be a wetlands at that point because it has been abandoned, like the case I had mentioned earlier. So if they let that thing fill up with water and ignore it or walk away from the project, for whatever case that may be, it actually will continue to become a wetlands. And then it changes things at that point. I don't know if I don't think if we classified it now really makes a difference. And also, I'm not sure, I don't know enough. Maybe classifying wetlands is really no big deal. It doesn't really add any complication. But to me, it sounds like just adding something else but that's, again, my point. And Commissioner Stewart wants to comment on that.
Lois, as I understand our regulations, we can look at any application if we think that there's a reasonable belief that it's going to impact the wetlands. So I don't think setting that as wetlands makes a difference. You just tell the staff that you want to look at any application on any future application on this site to see if we believe that there's impact on wetlands. And if we believe that, then we have the right to expand our review area and look at it.
You're right.
Good point.
Okay, good point.
Yeah,
And
there's
this property would have to come to us because of its proximity to wetland 1. So, okay, I'll drop it.
All right. Anything else? We feel like we're winding down. Commissioner Hall, please.
Yes. Is it acceptable to revisit one of the earlier topics for further discussion?
Absolutely. Anything you like.
Okay. This is regarding the difficulties in the application between the site construction and the remediation. And I have a question that I hope someone can answer. The application that was made to inland wetlands, is it the same application that was made to planning and zoning?
Yes.
It is.
Yes,
So
it was.
we are looking at duplicate sets of plans and documents.
Yes. If you remember, during one of the hearings, Kevin was doing a presentation and then realized that we didn't have this as up-to-date plans because apparently there was a revision based on a P&Z comment, and then he supplied them back to us so that we were all looking at the same thing.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure on that because I have been reviewing the planning and zoning meetings. Apparently last Thursday's meeting was still the open hearing and a lot of discussion going on there.
And if I'm not mistaken, BJ, they also were delivered all the big bundle like we were before we closed our hearing.
Okay.
They got all the same stuff that we got before we closed.
So if we were to make a decision to accept the application, would we need to accept the entire application as it is? I mean, there's acceptance with conditions and acceptance.
Excuse me, Commissioner Hall. I just want to make sure. Do you mean approve?
Approve.
Approve. When you say accept, you mean approve?
Correct. I mean
Okay,
approve.
all right. Just making sure. Okay.
I'm trying to understand. Planning and zoning is looking at the same thing we're looking at. And a lot of the concerns that I read from planning and zoning are similar to our concerns. although they seem to be much more focused on the fill and the materials and things of that sort. But if we were to approve or approve with conditions, does that mean then that the plan we've approved or approved with conditions goes to planning and zoning, and they would modify as needed or accept as we submitted?
I think I know, I
Go ahead.
understand what he's saying. Commissioner Hall, I think what you're trying to say is that if we approve something and then it's kind of covered by both commissions and the other commission, P and Z, doesn't approve the same thing or wants a change in something that we approve, like who supersedes who in a way, right?
That's a big part of it, in that there's a danger of conflicting approvals, I would think, or they.
Okay,
So I'm just, part of it is to understand that, because there are the sections I mentioned in specifically the maps that I don't feel it's our purview to approve, but it's clearly their purview to approve those pages. And if there was some way we could say, we approve except for these pages, and they could say we approve these pages.
BJ, you should approve, the commission should approve what we think is right and not worry about zoning. They have to they have to take our approval and the applicant has to adjust it so zoning likes it. Because if zoning doesn't like it, then they deny it if they can't live with our approval.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get bogged down with what zoning is looking at.
And if
Okay.
I do want.
come back to us.
Yeah,
They
then
have
they have to come back to us and
That affects our,
modify it.
And thank you. And I think everybody's got, good comments on this, and it's an important thing to think when you think about it. But let's let Barbara wrap up this topic here. She'll be the best, advice here.
Yeah, I was basically going to say what Commissioner Stewart said. You have to look at the application that's before you from a wetlands perspective, the entire application, and you make a decision whether you want to approve or deny, and not being concerned with what the Planning and Zoning Commission might do. And there are times when an applicant has to come back to a commission. So,
Barbara, you muted for some reason.
yeah, you muted yourself.
sorry. No, so again, what the Planning and Zoning Commission might or might not do should not be a concern of yours.
Very good. That relieves my concern. Thank you.
Now, don't forget, I mean, we've all been focused on the whole, but I believe the building that's down off of 64 Cambridge is also in our purview. So don't forget that that's also part of the inland wetland application, which we may never really focused on as much because of all the discussion on the whole.
That's where my concern was with that building, that
If it's in our upland review, we should be looking at that as well.
from the upland review perspective.
Correct. Anything to do with the wetlands aspect of it, yes.
So those pages that referred to septic and signage and lightage are not relevant to us, particularly.
Well, unless the septic is in our upland review area, then we would look at it, but the septic is still going to be approved by the health department.
Right. Okay, I'm good.
Okay. I guess that was a good point by Denise there. We have focused primarily on this filling and restoration thing. Let's just make sure that we're all, if we have any comments about the little building that they want to build with septic system and whatnot, that's in the upland review area. If there's any discussion in that area, let's have that happen now. Anybody have any comments? Just go ahead.
As I mentioned before, the piping for the groundwater well will be going right through the truck traffic area. and without the details of how that's going to be installed and when it's going to be installed, how deep, and that kind of thing, that definitely does apply to that developable portion that's on 64 Cambridge. That's the only one that struck me at the moment. There might be others, but at the moment, that's the only one I can think of. I would like to rely on Denise for that one.
I have to go back through my notes. It's been a while.
I do remember them saying about it would be buried, it would be protected. No one's going to lay any type of pipe over a path that dump trucks are driving over. I mean, it's just common sense prevails there. But they also have to comply to the plan. So they have to be able to show on inspection that the water's coming out. They're not going to want to constantly replace this thing, but for being damaged. But again, I think I can't remember if that concept came up before our last set of plans from them.
It was included in the last set of plans.
Right.
It was.
That was when we first saw it.
It was sketched in. I think we understood more about it after questioning, but I don't see in the plans or in the documentation much detail on exactly how that would work, how many, gallons per hour it would pump, how it would be monitored, any of the things. And honestly, that well and that 1,500-foot line are the most critical element of the whole wetlands remediation. So I think they are deserving of our time to make sure that part is right. That would be definitely, were we to approve with conditions, that would be a condition I would want to see a lot more detail on.
That would be a condition we can't really, or we shouldn't really condition on that because there's too much detail that would be required. And unless it's in writing and on a plan, we really, we can't build that for them. That's got to be done and presented to us to be decided upon. In my opinion, put it that way.
That's a concern then.
Yep, and there's one more that I thought of. If we're off this topic, I don't know if does anybody else have any comment on this before I take off on another?
It's open. We're open speak. It's just open mic. So just.
The concept of the fee in lieu of, where Mr. Karp volunteered that he would pay $10,000 to a land trust or somebody. In reviewing some of the paperwork from REMA, he said that, I don't have the exact figures, but that there is some kind of an accepted amount per square foot that is frequently used as a standard, I guess, for compensation for wetland, and it was well above that number. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it was because of the disparity between the two. That's it.
I guess that you brought it up, and I wasn't even thinking about it, but is any of the commissioners, or actually, should I ask that? I'm going to ask this to Denise or Barbara. That topic that Lois just brought up, is that actually a part of this application? I mean, it was thrown out by the applicant, but it wasn't really ever discussed. But is that part of their application now? That's kind of.
It was something that was offered, so the commission can certainly consider it.
Okay.
All right, so that was the easy question.
If we consider it, and let's say we consider it and we think it's a good idea to accept some form of an offer or define an offer for Mr. Karp, how do we proceed on something like that? How do we develop that idea?
Wasn't the offer, and correct me, I'm trying to find it through my notes, but wasn't the offer if the piping doesn't work in, in a certain timeline, like 3 years or whatever, I don't remember, then that was on the table, or am I mistaken?
I don't remember specifically what it was. We'd have to go back probably to the minutes or the recording, but
Yeah, and that's why.
because there was never a discussion on it, I don't think. I think he threw it out there, we heard it, we absorbed it, and if it is that, what I think at this point is that if we could, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It says here in my notes, CARP offered $10,000 to be donated to wetlands if things don't work in 3 to 5 years. That's what I had written down. I'd have to go back to the
Right.
minutes. That's what I wrote.
That's what I remember also.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, and it is what it is. There's a record of it. So,
Yeah. So
but-
I'm just trying to clarify it as you're asking the questions. I'm like, I thought it was, it was based on if something didn't work. That was the offer.
yeah.
But that should be a last ditch offer or a last ditch consideration, because the regulations and the statutes really want you to restore. That's the first priority, is to restore.
And I also,
But let's remember that he didn't. If I'm correct, and correct me, anybody correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't offer it to do anything at the site.
right, it was an
He said a
environmental.
donation. It was a
Yes.
donation to our commission to, I assume, to use on some kind of enhancement somewhere else in town.
Yes,
It's-
that's how I understand it. Environmental group or something to,
Yeah,
for, yeah, you're right. That's what I understand, Keith.
so it's not a monetary guarantee on the project. It's, that like, we could spend this money to try something else. I think it was more of, it's a donation, to us to decide where it would go, like I just said before. So I don't know how we consider that. I guess it is part of the application because he mentioned it and he is the applicant.
I don't know if we
I
can
don't
really
think
at this point.
it's that.
I said, I don't know if we can really consider it at this point, because it was offered if the project didn't work in 3 to 5 years. So that, and we would need to decide whether or not that was an appropriate amount of money, considering the size of the wetland.
We can't change it. It can't change it. It is as good. It's as good as if he had written it down on the application. I think, if I understand the way, if a applicant speaks out in the hearing, it becomes part of their application. So he put it in there as part of the application. So it is something to consider and think of, but we can't negotiate on it. And it's part of the application now, I think.
So what's the next step?
The next step is someone can make a motion to have staff prepare a draft motion of some sort to kind of, that we can vote on and discuss at the next meeting.
Well, the draft motion would be based on, if I'm not mistaken, Donna could cue in on this, but I mean, if we do a draft motion, it's based on some of your input, whether you, deny it with, and we list the reasons, or if you're approving it with conditions. What would we put a condition on for you to look at?
We wouldn't be voting tonight. We wouldn't be taking a vote on this application for approval and denial. We would need to prepare a draft motion that could be read and discussed and make sure it's written properly. So we're kind of doing it slightly different than what we've normally done.
Well, no, you're doing it as you normally would do it. You would request staff to either deny a draft of a approval or a draft of a denial. And then you would discuss it from there.
No, it is a little different, Donna, because my understanding is that normally the way that it works, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the commission would vote, and it would be very clear then what the vote is, and then staff would prepare something in writing based on the vote. What the chairman is saying here is that there is not going to be a vote tonight. The question is, does the commission want staff to prepare a draft motion that will then be considered and might be modified and voted on? So that's a little different. And the choices are that the commission could request that staff prepare a draft motion to approve, a draft motion to deny, or one of each to be considered at the next meeting. Those would be the
Okay.
choices for the draft motions.
Thank you.
Would that include a approval with conditions? Could that be included also?
Sure.
And if we were to have a draft of approval with conditions, would we need to submit conditions at this point?
Well, should be based on the discussions during deliberations.
Okay.
I think what we'd be able to do, Commissioner Hall and all the other commissioners, is discuss any conditions of approval, have them in it, but it's not the final. Like when we get the letter, the draft motion, we can still make adjustments at that point, because I would assume that, me personally would think that if there's going to be some conditions, they're going to kind of be extensive, and we don't want to go through what we went through the last time we had a bunch of conditions where we're trying to remember it and the wording and everything. This is what the draft is. We're going to look at it. If it sounds right, if it reads right to all of us, then we move forward. If it needs to be adjusted, it goes back for an adjustment.
Okay, I'm going to start the ball rolling. I move that the commission instruct the staff to provide a draft motion of denial for the application without prejudice, utilizing the comments and concerns of the commission expressed tonight.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
I'm sorry, we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Spence. Now, I don't want to make a mistake here. We vote on this motion? Or is this opening up of the?
From what I understand, the motion is requesting that staff prepare a draft motion for denial without prejudice based on the comments that were made tonight, so that the commission can then consider that motion at its next meeting and then would vote collectively on it. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are not voting to deny without prejudice. Commissioner Stewart's motion is asking staff to prepare a draft motion to be considered. And as I said, that could be changed at your next meeting. You would make a final collective decision how you want to vote at your next meeting.
Does the motion stay open, or do we all agree to have this, now? And the motion was for an action to be done by staff. I understand it wasn't an approval motion.
Right, so the question is whether that the rest of the commission agrees with what Commissioner Stewart is proposing.
Okay, so the discussion, I guess, now is, would someone like staff also to draft a motion of approval? I'm sorry, I didn't say that right, did I?
Yes, you did.
To prepare a draft motion of approval. Does anybody on the commission request staff to prepare a draft motion of approval?
I'll make that motion that we
Okay.
ask staff to prepare an an approval based on the discussion we've had tonight, using the same language as the denial.
And you would want, well, I guess they both have to have, well, is there such thing as conditions of denial? No, it's reasons for denial and conditions of approval, right?
Mhm.
So well, we got an open motion, so someone second that motion. Okay, so no one seconded it, but you know what?
Ross seconded it.
Ross will second it. Okay. So we're instructing staff to prepare both a draft motion of denial and of also approval. Approval will have to
And
have.
we have to vote on them.
That's where I'm confused still. Are we actually,
We got two open motions. We have to vote on them now.
okay. Correct? Okay.
Yes, there should be a consensus of the commission as to what you want staff to do.
Okay, so does it sound like the commission wants staff to prepare two letters? So we have two open motions, so I'm getting a little confused. It's getting a little bit beyond my experience, right? So I assume they need to be closed. Do we do them both individually? Somewhat.
Yes.
Yes,
you
okay.
can them
So on the
individually.
motion from Commissioner Stewart, seconded by Commissioner Spence for staff to prepare a draft motion of approval with conditions. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Donna?
Denial, yeah.
Denial.
I'm sorry, denial. Yours is
Denial,
denial. I'll say it again. Say it again. We have a motion from Commissioner Stewart, seconded by Commissioner Spence for staff to prepare a draft motion of denial with reasons.
Without prejudice.
I'm sorry, yes, without prejudice and with reasons for denial. All in favor of staff preparing that letter? All right.
Aye.
So that is unanimous. Everybody is in favor of that. We also have a motion from Commissioner Hall, seconded by Commissioner Masteracco, for staff to prepare a draft motion of approval with conditions. All in favor of that motion? All right. So only two votes on that. So that is a denial. I'm sorry. Anybody opposed to that? We have 1, 2, 3 oppositions, and anybody that would like to abstain from that.
We only have 5 votes.
Ross,
Yeah, Ross, what was your stance
Yeah,
on that?
you didn't,
he's muted
Ross, you
again.
didn't vote.
Ross, you didn't vote.
I really didn't know which direction I should go.
So I would say
Both.
you're basically abstaining then.
Okay,
Okay, so all abstentions is one. Sorry, I raised my hand to.
Right.
Okay, I think we
DJ,
got-
so I'm going to just state this for the record. So for the draft motion of denial without prejudice with reasons, the motion was made by Jim, seconded by Lois, and all the commission voted in favor of that. The second motion was a draft motion of approval with conditions made by Commissioner Hall, seconded by Commissioner Masteracco. The vote in favor was Commissioner Hall and Chairman Romano,
Right.
with
Then
The noes were
Commissioner
those opposed.
Stewart, Spence, and Gingras opposed, and Masteracco abstaining. Okay.
Abstain. Okay, so that means that staff will not be drafting a motion of approval. So that means that we need to now discuss the reasons for denial. Let's
I think we have the staff go through the minutes and the meeting and create something as we discussed. Now,
I don't know if it's that definitive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we should.
I think staff can do that. I mean, you're certainly welcome to have more discussion on this, but I think staff can do that. That's the whole idea. Staff can go back and review what was discussed and get a sense of what appears to be consensus. But as I said, you would then, since there's no collective decision, they're individual comments. That is the purpose of a draft motion to be considered. And at that time, if you have anything you want to change or you want to add,
Yeah,
you can
hold
do
on.
that, and then you can have a collective vote.
I'm trying to get whoever is backfeeding. It's not Barbara, it's not
It
any of
was
us.
Clark for a second. It was
Was
Clark
it?
for a second, but I
Sorry.
think it was a second. Now, Barbara, I just my only concern there is that it's been 2 hours and 12 minutes. That's a lot of time to extrapolate. I think could we at least do like our each of our own type of like wrap up summarization of so that at least can help guide them.
Yeah, you can do that. Sure, you can do that.
Okay, so I'll do that. Let's sorry, was somebody going to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, we're gonna do that, but if we didn't, I was gonna say the commission would have a chance when, and the draft to add to it.
Of course,
Correct.
of course.
Yeah,
But
so
at least
I'm just
now let's give you something to put in it. So we're not, so we have at least something to work off of and build
Mhm.
off of. So I'll go through again. Commissioner Spence, comment?
Well, you've got your topics that you talked about this evening, each one of those topics. If everybody was agreeable, could be part of a reason.
Of course,
Right.
of course. But again, it's to summarize because it doesn't have to just be the topics. It could be an individual thought from a commissioner.
Okay.
Okay. So start with you, Commissioner Spence. Just to summarize your reasons for wanting to deny this application.
Well, I'll go back to the topics. I believe that the application should be divided into remediation and development separately. That's one. I don't believe that the application is complete. There are a great deal of details that are missing that we would need to know in order to be able to really rule positively on this. I'll let others jump in. Those are the first
Okay.
two.
Commissioner Stewart.
and I guess I would add the fact that the length of construction is excessive, and that we wouldn't find out whether it worked for years. I would talk about that our experts have let us know that there's a very small chance of it actually working. And that's good for now. And what was discussed.
Okay, as discussed. Commissioner Gingras.
Those were the main points that we are all agreeing on.
Okay. Commissioner Massaraco.
I agree.
Okay. Commissioner Hall.
I'm in agreement on those points, but I would add that the plan for wetlands remediation through pumping from the ground well lacks sufficient detail. And I think that's the only thing I'd add.
That's it. Yeah, I think that was a resounding issue. For myself, I don't have much except for, honestly, I think that my comment is that we don't need to restore the entire watershed to wetlands 2. That was removed. That's my comment, meaning that we can maybe pull back on the amount of fill. We don't need to restore that much watershed, because there was once, so I want to say this in short terms, there was once an approval to remove part of that watershed.
Well, there's your next reason, which is there's other feasible and prudent alternatives.
Yeah, there's that being the reason, but specifically, yeah, the prudent feasible alternative, which being not having to restore the entire watershed that was removed based on a previously approved application. That's it for me.
Locate that watershed from where they proposed.
I'm sorry?
Or the watershed could be relocated from where they proposed. It could be still done, but in a different place.
Okay.
So it wouldn't necessarily have to be reduced. I wanted to ask a question. You said this is going to be considered at the next meeting. That's tomorrow.
No, I'm sorry, that we're next special meeting. Because
Thank
we
you,
need,
Lois.
no,
It's a little impossible for us to have to do.
I meant, we should have clarified that, because no, we're having another special session so Commissioner Stewart could join us. Or we discussed, oh, I'm sorry, there's another option, but tomorrow is definitely too soon.
Good.
We're not going to make Denise stay up all night. There's not enough coffee, right? Okay, so
Coffee.
As I also said in one of my emails, my class is over at 9:15. So if you wanted to keep it on the agenda at 9:15, just to keep it on not tomorrow's meeting,
yeah,
but the next January meeting, certainly could do that.
and that is
27th.
the 27th. So it's up to us tonight whether we want to have a special meeting or we want to add it to the 27th agenda. What do we think? Oh,
How big does the 27th agenda look at this moment? Will we be able to do the proper coverage?
Don, if I'm not,
There's,
continuation of 2 hearings probably, right?
yeah, I think so. We have an opening of 1 and yeah.
And there's an NOV that's supposed to be on it and a discussion I know of. I'm
Okay,
just
so
thinking out loud.
we'll have another special meeting because it shouldn't be that long. I don't think.
it should be pretty quick.
I'm okay with
In
that.
all honesty, with this, I think a special meeting.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on this. The applicant has agreed to an extension, but we want to make sure that we're right with the time limit. So Donna, perhaps you can help on this and let me know if I'm calculating things correctly. I had calculated that without adding on any additional extension time, that a decision would have to be made by January 20th, because that would be 35 days from December 16th, the close of the public hearing. I believe there are an additional 15 days total of extensions left out of the 90 days, because I think that we had said that if necessary, we could actually go to December 31st to close the public hearing if we were going to use all that extra time. So
Right.
I believe is that the information you have as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I
next-
calculate, and I'm certainly not suggesting that you need to go out this far, but I think that would bring us to February 4th as the last possible day that the commission could make a decision.
And our
on
meeting's
this
February 10th.
And if
What?
we did,
Our meeting
Yeah,
is.
I mean, I think it's a good idea to try to get a special meeting, especially with Commissioner Stewart's schedule, so that you don't have to.
yeah,
Because it is possible that when you get a draft motion, there may be discussion and some significant changes. It's hard to say.
well, right now, obviously Wednesdays wouldn't work because we want to wait till 9:15 to start. So we have next Tuesday, the 19th, and we're not going to do it on a Friday night, right? So, and we have to do, we only have certain times, right? We can only, Well, is there only open days on the GoToMeeting schedule?
There are, I was gonna say, I mean, we could do it again where we do the 26th and 27th. Or, Monday, I think the town offices are closed on the 18th for Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
But we could still do that Tuesday. It's fine. I just,
Okay, so the
it
20, the
would,
20.
it would be a little bit tight to do it on the 19th for us to, excuse me, get everything together and then get it
Yeah.
out.
I think we should do the 26th. What does everybody think?
That's fine with me.
Okay, looks good for everybody. Any other discussion of tonight's business?
Can,
I know.
can I ask one process question?
Sure.
Understanding that this draft motion is to be discussed on the 26th, that's essentially an up and down vote, right? A review of the draft and then an up and down vote depending on the language. that-
Right, but it doesn't have to, the point is that it's a draft. So if the commission collectively decides it wants to make changes and vote on something that is not exactly, in the draft, you can do that. That's up to the commission. Or you may decide to vote on it just the way it's presented.
So if we allowed enough time, then if we send it back for another draft, if we meet the 26th, you said,
I think, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I think what she meant is that we could actually have some change, we could vote on it with some changes to the language. You remember, it's not conditions of approval, it's reasons for denial.
Correct.
So we should have a little bit of flexibility. Is that what you were gonna say, Barbara?
Yes, and you can do it that night
Okay,
and then have a vote that night.
very good.
Thank you. So I think we're all set. I just, before I close and everybody leaves, did we talk about tomorrow night, and needing Commissioner Stewart available? And we could discuss it. I could close this now and we could talk about it after, but I don't want everybody to disappear and then.
What do you mean, Keith?
So
I
Is he going to,
Denise,
Go
you
ahead.
want to explain further?
I know where Keith is going. There's two things on the agenda tomorrow night where Keith has to recluse himself. And there was the concern, if Jim's not there, do you have a quorum to make decisions on those two items?
yeah, there would be 4 people. There would be Ross, BJ, Lois, and Clark. That would still be a quorum.
That's still fine.
Okay, all right. Well,
That
still,
was the
I think,
concern
but
earlier.
we still,
Donna, if you need me, then, and you can wait till 9:15, just give me a phone call and I will sign on.
It's just so you know, Jim, it has to do,
But I
Wait.
still, are you voting on something that I've seen? That's the question.
yeah, it's a bond release that came up and it's a time extension, and both of them Keith has to recluse himself on.
Okay, yeah, if you need me and then give me a phone call and I'll sign on and we can get it done. If not, then don't worry.
well, Commissioner Stewart, why don't you just plan on coming in when you can? And I don't know where they fall on the agenda, but we'll package them towards the end, the two together, if they're not already next to each other. And then, so
Okay.
Lois can do it at one time. And, unless we actually are wrapping up at 8:30, then, I think.
I'll agree with you if you let me make my motion before 9:30.
Well, they shouldn't take long anyway, so yeah, you should be able to wrap it up by 9:30. But there's just discussion on one of them.
No, Denise, I meant tonight.
Oh,
Tonight.
I'm sorry.
Tonight. Yeah, we're, I'm just saying, my comment was that if the meeting happens to go really short, I don't think we're gonna hang around for,
For Jim,
long
no.
period of time. Yeah. All right. Okay, great. So I like to adjourn this meeting. Someone to make
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. A motion for Commissioner Stewart to adjourn. Do we have a second? So
Okay.
I think second by Commissioner Hall. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. This special meeting closes on 9:26 p.m.